recording. So I think I'm recording now. We'll see. All right. So they start off in the ordinary world, and then they get the call to adventure. Okay. Uh, Fantastic quests don't happen in everyday life. Heroes must be removed from their typical environment. Most heroes show a reluctance to leave their home. That's the refusal of the call, which isn't listed on this, but a lot of times a hero will refuse the call. All right. They don't want to leave their friends and their family to go on this quest. But in the end, they have to accept it because if they don't accept it, you don't have a story. Right. Usually there's a discovery, some event or some danger that starts them on the heroic path. Heroes find a mystic object or discover their world is in danger. In some cases, heroes happen upon their quest by accident. Campbell puts it like this: a blunder, the merest chance reveals an unsuspected world. Right? And this comes up, I mean, if you've read any of the YA books, right, this is how they all start. The ones in the future, the ones in the past, the fantasy ones, whatever. All these kids start off in the ordinary world, and then they get some sort of something happens. Right? We call it the call to adventure because sometimes it's a person who actually shows up and says, "Hey, let's go on this adventure." But sometimes it's the death of a parent or an earthquake, or they find a magical book, right? Something like that. The new world the hero is forced into is much different than the old one. Campbell describes this new world as a fateful region of both treasure and danger, a distant land, a forest, a kingdom underground, beneath the waves or above the sky, a secret island, lofty mountaintop, or profound dream state, a place of strangely fluid and polymorphous beings, unimaginable torments, superhuman deeds, and impossible delights. All right, so you can think about like the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, where they go through the wardrobe and they end up in Narnia, right? This description may seem pretty vague, but think of all the various fantasy realms characters that entered throughout the years. Middle Earth, which is where the Hobbit is, Oz, which is where Dorothy is. I just mentioned Narnia, Wonderland with Alice. Right? Sometimes it's even in outer space. Haunted houses, or in the Matrix. Right? Matrix is one of my favorite hero stories too. Regardless of all the details, the new world is sure to be filled with adventure. And then they list some of those places. Okay. Refusal of the quest. Okay. During the call to adventure, heroes are given a task or quest which only they can complete. They are the chosen one. All right, that comes up frequently. They are faced with a choice: accept the quest or deny it. Their choice might seem like a no-brainer. If they don't accept the quest, there's not much of a story. Or will there? Actually, there are stories about heroes who don't accept their destinies. When this happens, the stage is set for disaster. The reason why the powers that be have chosen a particular hero, refusal of the quest, only brings trouble. So heroes that refuse to do their quest often find problems, such as King Minos, uh, the monarch of Crete, who antagonizes the Greek hero Theseus, does not do what the gods ask him to do. Poseidon, Lord of the Seas, sends him a beautiful white bull. The gods' only order is that Minos must sacrifice the creature back to him. After seeing the magnificent beast, Minos decides he just can't bring himself to do what the gods have asked and keeps the bull as a personal trophy. Enraged, Poseidon vows revenge and causes Minos' wife to burn with lust for her husband's prized beast. The rest of the story is strictly in NC-17, meaning the wife and the bull get it on. But that's how we get the Minotaur. In The Lion King, Simba refuses to return to Pride Rock when he's supposed to. Star Wars, Luke refuses and said he has to stay with his aunt and uncle. But finally, they do accept the call, all right, most of the time. And then they enter into the unknown. And this is the crossing the threshold. All right, they leave their old world and they go to a new world. And this is where the adventure truly begins. As they embark on their journey, the hero enters into a world they have never experienced before. Very often, it is filled with supernatural creatures, breathtaking sights, and the constant threat of death. Unlike the hero's home, this outside world has its own rules, and they quickly learn to respect these rules as their endurance, strength, and mettle are tested time and time again. After all, it is not the end of the journey which teaches, but the journey itself. Right? So Dorothy, when she goes to the Wizard of Oz, has to learn new rules. Neo has to, come to grips with the reality that he's in the Matrix to learn how to control it. Right? Luke in Star Wars has to learn how to use a lightsaber and understand the Force. Most of the time, they get some help. All right, they get a supernatural aid. It can either be helpers or it can be a talisman of some sort. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean magical. There are plenty of hero stories that don't have wizards or witches per se. Supernatural simply means above the laws of nature. Heroes are almost always started on their journey by a character who has mastered the laws of the outside world and come back to bestow this wisdom upon them. This supernatural character often gives them the means to complete the quest. Some of the times this gift is simple wisdom. Other times it's an object with magical powers. In every instance, it is something the hero needs to succeed. As Campbell says, one has only to know and trust the ageless guardians will appear. The job of the supernatural sister is to give the heroes what they need to finish the journey. All right. So that's Gandalf, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the fairy godmother, and Cinderella. They're the person that gives them what they need to finish the journey. Sometimes it's a lightsaber. All right. Sometimes it's a ring. Sometimes it's ruby slivers, and so on. They also will sometimes give you people to help you along the way. So every hero needs helpers. No heroes rarely do things on their own. If you think of all the heroes in the Marvel universe, all of them have somebody that helps them, right? Much like every superhero needs a sidekick. Without the assistance of their companions and helpers along the way, most heroes would fail miserably. For example, in the Greek hero story of Theseus, Minos' daughter Ariadne, after falling hopelessly in love, helps Theseus navigate the labyrinth. She does this by holding one end of a golden thread while Theseus works his way inward to slay the Minotaur. Without her help, Theseus would never have fulfilled his quest. In Lord of the Rings, Frodo has Samwise. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy has the Tin Man, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion. And with the help of their special tools and the allies and friends that are helping them along the way, they are going to face tests, right, and eventually a supreme ordeal. So as they progress, they do a series of tests, and they pick up skills along the way, right? They might learn a new trick of the Force. They might learn a new power that they have. They might just become more confident and intelligent, right? Until eventually they come to the final battle. What's it called in video games? I forget what it's called. The boss level, right?
Yeah.
Of course, they're blowing leaves right now. And then once they defeat that, they get some sort of reward. Typically, there's a reward given to the heroes for passing the supreme ordeal. It could be a kingdom. It could be a hand of a princess, which is fairly typical. It could be the Holy Grail. Whatever it is, it's a reward for the hero's endurance and strength. After the heroes complete the supreme ordeal and have rewarded firmly in hand, all that is left is for them to return home. All right, and so they return home, and a lot of times they're a king when they return home. All right, and they restore balance to the two worlds. All right, successful in the hero's quest is life changing for them and often for many others. By achieving victory, they have changed or preserved their original world. Often they return with the elixir, an object or personal ability that allows them to save the world. Okay. So while Joseph Campbell monomyth works best with traditional forms of the quest, folk and fairy tales, myths, legends, and other fantasies, it can be applied to many different genres and types of stories. A quest does not have to include swords and monsters. It can just easily occur in the real world. The monomyth is ageless and universal and exists anywhere and everywhere. Have you ever seen the movie Happy Gilmore?
Uh-huh.
Okay. That follows the same pattern, right? Happy Gilmore is in the regular world, trying to play hockey. His girlfriend breaks up with him, things, just happening. And then his grandfather dies and he's out messing with the golf clubs. All of a sudden, people tell him, hey, you're pretty good at this. He goes to the driving range, and that's when Chubbs shows up. Chubbs is basically the guy that says, hey, come with me on this journey, right? And then he enters into the world of professional golf. He leaves his old world behind, enters the new world, has to learn all of the rules of the PGA. All right, and they play it for laughs sometimes, but he has people to help him. I think her name is Julie. I can't remember what her name is, but the blonde girl that helps him. And then some of the other people, his caddy and so on. Right. He has his grandfather's golf clubs, which are his magic talisman, and so on. But it definitely follows that whole pattern. The other thing that we can look at when we look at hero stories is the different types of characters that show up. These are called archetypes, meaning that they're kind of like stereotypes of characters, right? They're a pattern that you can fit in. All hero stories, this one's a given, have a hero, right? That's just a given, right? Then usually, actually, almost always, there's a shadow or villain. There's usually mentors, somebody who can teach you the things you need to know in order to succeed. There's the herald, all right. Though sometimes the herald's an event, sometimes it is a character who says, "Hey, come on this adventure." Have you seen the Harry? Have you read Harry Potter or seen the Harry Potter movies?
No, not in a long time.
Okay, but anyway, Hagrid would be like the herald, all right, but the mentor would be what's his name, um, Dumbledore. Okay. Sometimes there's threshold guardians, people who try to keep you from going on the adventure. In Happy Gilmore, there are people who Shooter McGavin, who ends up being the Shadow, but there are people that try to keep him from being on the tour, right? Because they don't think he's worthy to be on the PGA Tour. Shapeshifters, and I don't always like the names of these, but the shapeshifter here are characters who change. All right, you think they're bad, but they end up being good, or you think they're good and they end up being bad. And, um, they can't always be trusted. So it could be somebody who you think is an ally, and then I'm like, oh shit, he's been working for the bad guy the entire time, right? Or it could be somebody like Han Solo in Star Wars, who you think is just like a common criminal, but then he comes through in the end. A lot of times there are tricksters, right, who kind of add some comic relief to a hero story because without them, it would be kind of a downer. If you think about the Spider-Man Far From Home, Homecoming and Far From Home, Happy definitely plays that trickster role, right? Of course, they have allies, and then this last one is kind of started to vanish. But there is a temptress, all right, a femme fatale, a female character, because usually the hero is male. They have a female character that tries to distract him from his quest using sex and whatnot. That one's starting to disappear because it's very, very sexist, and we don't do that as much anymore. But it does show up sometimes in classical mythology. Right. So those are the basics of the journey. And again, you can find that right here if you need to go back to it. You can also kind of look at this little diagram right here, right, which starts with our hero, right? He gets the call to adventure right here. He gets some supernatural aid. If you recall from our document, after the call, sometimes he refuses, but then eventually goes. All right, he meets threshold guardians, but eventually he crosses that threshold. And here's that line that represents the threshold. All right, it's that crossing. So everything down here is the fantasy world. All right, and he finds helpers and mentors, and he faces challenges. All right, maybe a new helper comes in at this point until he reaches like the very bottom, right? And this isn't mentioned in the document that we read, but it's definitely here, and it happens to a lot of the heroes. We think they're dead. All right, we've all seen this, and so no, Superman's dead, but then he comes back, in 5 minutes. We all know that trick, right?
Yeah.
And it's because it's classic storytelling. We think that they failed, right, and then they come back. In Greek mythology, they literally die. They go to Hades, and then they have to come back. And this happens, right as they're facing that ultimate battle, right? So Luke Skywalker sitting there fighting the Death Star, and it looks like he's going to fail. He can't make the shot. The Darth Vader and the other Tie fighters are on his tail. He's lost his wingman. All right, it looks like they're going to fail. All right, but then in comes Han Solo, who blasts away Darth Vader, and Luke hears the voice of Obi-Wan, who tells him to use the Force, Luke. And he transforms. He becomes a true user of the Force. right? And then he meets back up with everybody. There's a huge celebration. He gets the gift. All right, this says of a goddess, but it's Princess Leia here. He doesn't get the girl. All right, but him and Han and Chewie all get their medals presentation. Unfortunately, R2 and C3PO don't because they hate droids or something. All right, and then he kind of goes back, now as a hero, all right, and saver of the world. All right, so there is a quiz that goes with this. I can click on it here. Let you see it. Oh, I need to get rid of that question right there because that's a blank question. All right, but question number 1. All right, I'll help you with. The hero always starts off in the what?
In the ordinary world?
There you go. Why are you asking me? Just tell me the answer. You said that like a question. You didn't say it like a question. All right, so you can go in and take the quiz. We got a little bit under 15 minutes. If you want to finish the quiz now, you can. I think this one is entirely, no, we got some short answer down here. So if you want to some help on the short answer, you can. But I do ask you to give an example of a supernatural helper and talisman. So you can pick one from the text I just did, all right, or you'll get extra credit if you come up with one of your own, right? And then here, I want you to choose any work of literature, that's a book, TV, movie, whatever, right, and give an example, at least 4 of the characters, the archetypes that are listed there in that document, right? So if you want to start off with those 2, I can help you with them a little bit, and then go back and get the multiple choice, but however you want to do it, okay?
Okay.